Welcome to Grid Live Wrap-Up. We're going to be recapping the Formula E, IndyCar, NASCAR, and MotoGP race weekend before the big race weekend coming up in the motorsport world with the Indy 500, Coca-Cola 600. I'm Joe San Diego. With me, Matthew Bro from Grid Network TV and Grid Rising on the air tomorrow to recap all the action from Dover. Plus, Kobe Lambeth from Grid Tonight every Wednesday right here on YouTube and the Grid Network. A big thank you to our Patreon investors, Colin, Deschelle, Mark, Robin, David, Matthew, Nico, Gloria, for investing in us through Patreon or YouTube paid membership. Link in the video description to our Patreon page and YouTube membership. You just hit that button to subscribe and join. Also, buy me a coffee, YouTube super chat. Jason still leads the leaderboard with 3 total. And easy way to support us, hit the like button, the thumbs up right here on YouTube. We're on the air every week and at Grid Network TV across social media on all the platforms you see listed there. Now, I was on social media. A lot of people woke up to the shocking news that occurred in MotoGP, and unfortunately, just one of those days. We'll start off with MotoGP since we only had MotoGP Formula E for the grid ranking. Kobe, MotoGP, I think, showed it was a sad reminder of the terrifying nature of motorcycle racing when something goes wrong.
Yeah, Joe, and I feel like we got extremely lucky today that everybody walked away with their lives because of certain things that happened a little differently. We might be having a very somber show tonight, and in the Catalunya Grand Prix, being in Spain is obviously a big thing for Spanish riders in the field, like Alex Marquez and Pedro Acosta. And those two had a thrilling battle in the sprint race on Saturday, with Marquez winning by 0.041 seconds over Acosta on Sunday. It led the two battle again for the Grand Prix when setting up another exciting finish, but the excitement soon turned to grave concern when Acosta's bike developed a mechanical issue, and before he could raise his hand to alert the riders behind that he had an issue, Marquez, who was battling for the lead, collided with him. Acosta was able to drive to the pits with a flat tire and rear damage with help, and Fabio Di Giannantonio and Raul Fernandez were both hit by debris. Giannantonio came back, though, and he was able to claim the Grand Prix win despite getting hit with the debris, but, all the eyes and the focus were on Alex Marquez. After he collided with Acosta, his bike continued to the rider's right on the grass. It hopped over an access road where Marquez lost the little control he had on the bike. Then the bike was tumbling down the backstretch, and as the grass kept launching it over and over and over again, the bike was destroyed beyond recognition. Marquez landed on the gravel, tumbled down the grass, and made contact with the concrete wall. And this includes his helmet striking the concrete wall. Immediately, red flags come out of right away, and all the medical attention was given to Marquez. And we actually saw a scary image online of Marquez lying face down on the grass, which captured the seriousness of the crash in the moment. And Marquez, he was airlifted to the hospital where, it was reported he has multiple fractures and underwent surgery. And on Marquez's Instagram account, there's a photo of him smiling, giving a thumbs up, but wearing a neck brace, and obviously, in hospital attire. Joe, starting with you, like you said, a lot of us woke up this morning to surprising news because I didn't watch the race live, and then I see all these images on my time. I'm like, what on earth went on? Like, then when I saw the replay and then the image, I'm like, that was absolutely horrifying crash. So based on from your experience early this morning, how shocking was it to witness such a violent crash, and what were your initial thoughts on how this crash could have been prevented, or maybe it couldn't have been prevented?
The nature of motorcycle racing, I don't know how much could have been done to prevent such an accident. You have a situation where the lead bike, Pedro Acosta, for some reason, something cut out with that bike, and before he could even get the hand up to notify the other riders he's in trouble, Alex Marquez, who is racing for the lead competition, hard, intense racing, gets into the back of him. The bike had to been damaged to the point he could not control that bike. He just kept going over more and more to the rider's right into the grass. And then once he hit that access road, I mean, it's easy for folks to say, oh, they could have paved the entire area so he didn't lose control when he hit that access road from the grass. Would that still have prevented the accident, though? Because there was that opening, there was some tire walls. There's so many what-if situations with if this accident could have been prevented. It's just one of those deals where in motorsports, we're in 2026. Safety is a big priority for everyone. Track standards are something monitored by, in this case, the FIM. Over in four wheels, we got FIA and the track classification system. So they're always looking at how to grade the tracks where there's safety improvements. This is one of those accidents where I feel a lot of people did not anticipate could occur, but now it has. So I can only imagine in Catalunya, Spain, they're going to be making adjustments to the track, where it's going around and paving more of the area, especially around access roads. Could they move that concrete wall a couple feet further away, or even potentially expand the sand gravel trap for the rider? There's just so many ways you could probably look at this, but at the end of the day, just one of those incidents where most people would have not thought of this kind of incident occurring until we saw it today. Now we know what happened. People are going to be looking at their tracks, especially on the MotoGP calendar, for such risk, because reminded me very similar of Austria a few years ago, where we saw that bike tumbling and nearly take out Maverick Vinales and Valentino Rossi. They changed the track afterwards, so reduce the chances of that occurring. I'm pretty sure next time we come back here, you might see some changes to the track.
Yeah, and thankfully Alex is okay. I mean, it's a scary incident, and like you asked, like how shocking was it? It was very shocking. I mean, let's be honest, MotoGP drivers are probably the baddest MFers on the planet. I guess the wheels they got to be able to go out there and do what they do is incredible. And unfortunately, things like this occur, especially the Marquez brothers seem to always be pushing the limits, and things like this happened. It was very shocking, very, very scary, I would say. It's hard to say, though, like Joe mentioned, what can you really do to prevent this? I don't know if the warning on, I'm trying to think, was it Acosta's bike when it lost power a little bit? I don't know if a warning thing can come on quicker to let him know faster so people don't run right into the back of him. So it's just things like that, right? Maybe little technology advances they can make. But like you said, you never really expect an incident like this to occur, especially if there was more grass there instead of a runoff. Could this have been prevented? Maybe so, or maybe not. I think it's one of those deals. And like Joe had just mentioned too, is it possible to change the course? I believe so, because I believe a Moto2 driver back in 2016, Louis Salome, I apologize if I say that name wrong, he actually was involved in an accident here at turn 13 and passed away in surgery afterwards. So this track has proven to take lives before. So it's a very scary situation. So luckily Alex and then all the other riders made it out alive. So it's just one of those things. What really can you do? So I'm curious, you guys know more about MotoGP than I do. So I'm curious, like, what do you think as well, like Kobe, what do you think they can do to really prevent something like this from happening again? Because besides maybe more technological advances for Marquez's bike, or any of their bikes really, what more can they do?
Yeah, honestly, Matthew, I'm not really sure what much more they can do. I'm sure they're gonna, like Joe said, after they had this scary incident, which the bike come flying and they almost took off Valentino Rossi's head. That was very scary. I remember when that happened, and Valentino Rossi even said himself that was the moment he realized it's time to get out of MotoGP racing and retire, because that was seriously a moment where his life literally flashed in front of his eyes, and given how long he had been riding motorcycles, I don't really blame him for that being, his moment where he decided, yep, I need to go ahead and retire, before, I won't be here to live out the rest of my years in this world. But the most shocking thing to me was seeing how Alex Marquez's bike was absolutely destroyed, by this horrible tumble. And I've never seen a motorcycle, in so many different pieces, and like we say, just destroyed beyond recognition. And if I hadn't known that, Alex Marquez was okay when I woke up late this morning, I would have feared the worst after seeing that image, because it looked extremely terrible. And although he does have fractures, and obviously going to take some recovery time. If that's the worst of his injuries, we had a lucky escape today, because he could have been in a very bad position, worse injured, or even worse, like I said at the top, we could have been having a somber, show tonight. So I'm glad that he was able to walk away from this incident, and I'm sure MotoGP is going to be looking at ways they can improve. They can try to make the track, Barcelona Catalunya safer when they come back next year. But we also have to accept the fact, motorcycle racing is extremely dangerous, and there's only so much you can do to prevent these things from happening. I'm honestly surprised these things don't happen more often in MotoGP, because these guys, they absolutely be hauling the metal around these tracks, and if you get in a wreck, it's going to be a big one, because it's not like in a car. You're not in a car like you get in a wreck and you're gonna be sliding, over 100 miles per hour to a stop somewhere, either through the grass on the surface of the track in a gravel trap, or in some cases like today, you might hit a wall, which is a really bad thing. But yeah, big shocker today at MotoGP, and very lucky that everyone was able to come out of that, with their lives, and not just Alex Marquez. You think about his brother Marquez as well, who has also had multiple scary incidents throughout his career, and he's on the mend now from his own injury he suffered, in the last race weekend. I believe it was at Le Mans, France, which, and we know Marquez, he's going to try to come back at some point later this season from those injuries. And I can't help but wonder what was his thought, seeing his brother in that condition, especially, since he wasn't, there. A real scary deal these last couple of weeks for the Marquez family. And sadly, that wasn't the only incident we saw today. After the red flag on the restart, we had another red flag after Johann Zarco missed his breaking point, colliding with Pecco Bagnaia. Zarco's left leg got caught in the rear wheel of Bagnaia's bike. And that's another photo that's circulating on the internet. It was quite stunning to see Zarco's leg, just wedged in between the bike. Really scary situation. And as the bike was tumbling down the sand trap, so was Zarco. And he is currently in the hospital, and he posted online as well. No fractures for him, but, he's going to be on the road to recovery to make sure he can get back on the bike. And my great tonight co-host Joshua Burks from JB Motorsports said he felt like the race should have been called off after a second consecutive red flag and scary incident. So Matthew, starting with you on this one, do you think MotoGP made the correct call to keep racing after another scary incident?
I feel, Kobe, that's like a double-edged sword. I think you could say yes, because they made it through the rest of the race. Everyone made it okay. But no, at the same time, because you just had two major incidents where could have honestly killed two drivers back to back in the same lap, technically, right? Because they came back on the red flag and it happened again. So, yeah, it's hard to say, really. I guess you could say yes, because all the drivers ended up getting through it. But to watch Zarco's leg, I can't believe he didn't fracture anything. I mean, talk about the mysterious ways the human body can work. The fact that you can crash at 140 plus miles per hour, have your leg get caught in someone else's motorcycle, tumble, and not fracture anything. He might tear some things, like I think he did tear some things, but the fact that he didn't fracture anything, that's just truly an incredible sight. So I'm glad he's doing better than what he could have been doing too. But yeah, I guess the way the red flag rules, I think if they did they did say, oh, we're not resuming the race, I think because it was only halfway, that they wouldn't have counted the race at all. But I think if they made it to at least 2/3, so I guess if it was like 18 of 24, or even like 16 of 24 laps instead of 12, then they probably could have gotten away with saying, okay, let's get through it. But yeah, I guess everyone made it out okay. And I think if this was like a lap 16, lap 18 incident, Kobe and Joe, I think they probably would have said, you know what, we're done. We don't need to risk any more lives. But hey, I'm glad they got the rest of the race, and I'm sure the drivers finishing on the podium were glad they did too. But yeah, tough overall day for MotoGP.
Tough day, and it's a tough call, as you said. It's a double-edged sword, because when we saw the accident occur, and particularly the replay, MotoGP didn't show the replay of Alex Marquez tumbling down. They showed different angles. You could see Pedro Acosta, when he put his hand up, got hit, and then he saw what was happening to Alex Marquez. You could tell he was upset. You could tell he was shaken up by that. A lot of the riders, especially when they saw the replays, were shaken up by how violent the accident was, what happened to Alex Marquez. And then we come back, as you mentioned, Matt, not even like a lap later of competition, and first corner, Johann Zarco has this horrendous crash, and my goodness, the images from that crash is just scary. Just the thought that his leg was caught up between the Ducati's bike and the wheel, the rear wheel. That is just crazy that he walked out with so little serious injuries, but still gonna have some road to recovery. At the end of the day, everybody is a racer, and there's always that old saying: "We got to go race. If something really bad happened, we'll still race because that's what they want us to do." And I get that philosophy. At the same time, I feel there are certain instances where you have to say, "Okay, maybe let's just end the race early." MotoGP does have a rule where the race was 3/4 of the way through. Okay, red flag, it's done. But we were just at the halfway point. So I understand MotoGP. Hey, let's get the race in. We have a huge crowd here. This is a country where MotoGP racing is huge. Everybody will want to see us racing. But end of the day, I just feel we got a situation where, thankfully, both riders were able to post on social media that they're going to be back. They're going to be in recovery. I think if this was a much more worse situation, similar to what we saw years ago with the last MotoGP unfortunate death, I think then that's when we will say, okay, race has to stop. That's what he did, I believe, was in Malaysia years ago. It probably was like 2019 or 2017. I can't remember no more. But I feel it is a hard decision. But at the end of the day, they went with the race. Thankfully, after the second restart, it went incident free for the most part.
Yeah. Really glad it went incident free after that. But yeah, I tend to believe if we were a little bit closer to the end of the Grand Prix, saw that scary incident, I probably would have, just ended it at that point. And after, two scary incidents, the riders, just really minded their P's and Q's after that and just got to the end. But I can't help but wonder what everybody in the MotoGP paddock is thinking, after today's scary day, because like as we've said, it's a reminder of the danger there is in motorsports. Because as dangerous as MotoGP is, we don't usually see this happen, very, very often. And then not for it to happen once, but twice in the same Grand Prix. It was just a real startling reminder, that that there's always a chance that these riders may not come back home someday, which is really unpleasant. But also at the same time, it's just a part of the game. This is how it is. In motorsports, I'm very thankful that Alex Marquez and Johann Zarco looks like they're going to be able to make a full recovery and get back on the bike at some point later this season, hopefully. And Joe, when I was looking at the clip of the Zarco incident, I saw I believe it was on Pecco Bagnaia. He looked down, saw Zarco, and he was immediately motioning for the medics to get there or whatever, because he saw it was a serious situation. And seeing how Zarco's leg got hung in the bike, I'm honestly extremely surprised that he did not break a leg. As soon as I saw that, I said, oh, he probably had a very bad fracture of the leg. And then for him not to break his leg, that was a very lucky escape by Zarco, because his leg could have been snapped in half by that incident. And we're certainly going to be seeing what MotoGP can do moving forward. But I have a feeling that as Matthew was saying, outside of things that it can do from a technological point of view, I don't really see that there's much they can do. Besides next time we come to this track in 2027, and maybe just modify something. Maybe walls will be in a different place or something. But for the most part, I think it just shows us how dangerous motorcycle racing is. And there's only so many things that you can do for safety.
Yeah, I just want to quickly say so much you could do for safety. And like you said, Pecco Bagnaia, he started motion. He saw, I was like, oh, this is not good. And we're so lucky that Johann Zarco did not break a leg, or, we had an even worse type of injury. But that's just the nature of motorcycle racing. When you crash, there's no roll cage to protect you. You're going to be going for a nasty ride. And man, just so grateful everyone is able to leave the track and be talking about coming back to the track.
Yeah, for sure, Joe. And I'm glad we're not having a conversation tonight of what we could have been having, well back in 2011 during the Malaysian Grand Prix when Marco Simoncelli unfortunately lost his life in that event. I remember that quite vividly because it was a tough few weeks for the motorsports community because just a week beforehand we lost Dan Weldon at the Las Vegas Motor Speedway in the IndyCar race there in their season finale, and then the next week. And in October 2011, lost Marco Simoncelli during the Malaysian Grand Prix. So I'm really happy that we don't have to have that hard discussion tonight about losing a rider, and hopefully we don't have any riders, lose their lives anytime soon in the MotoGP environment or any motorsport racing series. And now with motorcycle racing, as we've been saying, certain dangers will always be there. Mainly the riders fall off the bike and get hit by another bike or get caught in a wheel. Concrete walls are generally away from straights like the pit wall area, and next year Adelaide is on the calendar, and that is surrounded by many walls. And we talked about this on our Grid Tonight show when it was announced a few months or so ago. And a lot of people, they're not looking forward to Adelaide, not because it's not a great street circuit or a great city or anything like that. It's because we know how dangerous it can be on a street circuit. When it comes to motorcycles. We know Macau has the annual motorcycle Grand Prix, but many consider it really dangerous because if you've seen the circuit at Macau, the walls are very tightly close together. So if you're on a motorcycle and you get it wrong, it's not going to be pretty. And we've had 9 riders die there on the streets of Macau, and the most recent was 2017. And don't even get me started on the Isle of Man. It seemed like we have a motorcycle rider die in that event almost every single year that's happening because it happens really often. And Joe, like when you think about Adelaide, the new Australian Grand Prix race that's coming next year, does this race raise concerns about Adelaide and the planning of that event?
It does on several aspects, and especially now that we've seen this kind of accident occur where on a straightaway, exit a corner, someone loses control of their bike and they hit a concrete wall. On a street course, that's going to be much harder to try to mitigate. And you got now concrete walls on both sides, not just one side, because things would have been different if Alex Marquez hit Pedro Acosta and went to the right where there was more open space. Adelaide, you're going to have concrete walls on both sides. So I really am hoping the organizers for Adelaide, MotoGP, they're going to say, hey, we really want to evaluate the safety precautions we're taking here and not waver on it just to make this event work. Everybody knows MotoGP has new ownership management from Liberty Media, which has done tremendous amount of success with Formula One and the growth of that sport. I get it. Adelaide, a lot of race fans love that track. I love that track. But for MotoGP, that just seems really risky. Move it into the city, more accessible to everyone. I understand that, but is this really what we want? Is this really an event that is not going to be waiver on any of the safety measures? I'm hoping they do a good job and have it where it is a safe event, so that way we could enjoy the good racing. And motorcycle racing, accidents occur. I mean, we've seen accidents occur on the first lap, first corner. That has happened before, including in Argentina involving Zarco, Pecco Bagnaia. If we're going to have these kind of accidents, we got to make sure the track, regardless of location, and in this case, a straightaway, you have it where it's not going to be a safety factor that could result in a serious injury or worse.
I agree 100%. It's one of those things where it's scary to even think about. But luckily, they have about, I believe, is it like 17 and a half months? I think the last thing I read, it could have changed, but it was like November 2027. Probably has changed, so I apologize if I have the wrong information. But yeah, the fact that they're going to a track like this, just an area, like Joe said, you want to get the more people there, right? But which is a good thing, but at the same time, especially on a street circuit where I also read they can get up to like 210, 211 miles per hour, something like that on these bikes. If something fails and there are concrete walls that are not covered, we're going to be having a very different conversation than we are today. So hopefully they have all this time now to prep. MotoGP, hopefully they can make the necessary investments into the street course that they're going to make sure that there is very, very, very limited risk for these drivers in a very, very, very risky sport. So yeah, I'm curious. Hopefully, like Kobe had mentioned too, we don't have to have another conversation that's more somber about the sport, because there hasn't been a death, I believe, in MotoGP since 2011. I think Moto3 and Moto2 have happened within the last 5 to 10 years. But as long as they keep it as safe as possible, I truly believe that we will have a great race there. But until then, you just got to hope that they make the right calls. And with the safety measures that go into this facility for the inaugural Grand Prix there. So, yeah, that's really what I got. Hopefully it works out, and we probably won't even remember this conversation in a year and a half from now, but as long as it works out, right?
Yeah, hopefully we don't have to have this conversation a year and a half from now, because MotoGP will continue riding a good safety streak without having these scary incidents happening often. And yeah. Well, as I was saying, we had a long conversation on our Grid Tonight show in the last few months when they announced that Phillip Island was going to be going to a replacement with Adelaide, and for MotoGP's sake next year. I really hope that they can have that race without any major issues, because of, a street circuit on MotoGP bikes. It sounds like, it don't really go together because of how dangerous it can be. We've seen how fast, these bikes can go. And if they get it wrong, it could be a very bad situation, as we see at these traditional road courses. Are usually, a lot of runoff areas. So if a rider, has a high side crash or something, slides off the bike, they have a lot of room, where they can roll. Well, then if you have a high side out on the streets of Adelaide, you're going to be sliding down down the city streets, and there's going to be a wall right there. And, you don't want to see someone's body sliding, at a higher amount of speed and go crashing into a wall. That's not going to be a pretty visual to watch on TV. And then, the photos that, that will come after that. So for MotoGP's sake, hopefully when it comes to this new event next year in Adelaide, that they're really doing their homework and seeing what they can do to make that street circuit as safe as possible. And speaking of safe, Joe, I believe we're gonna switch gears now to Indianapolis 500 qualifying, because when you think about the Indianapolis 500, I'm going for the pole. That's not really the safest thing, because these drivers, they have qualifying boots. They are absolutely on the edge, and if it all goes wrong, you could be in a whole lot of trouble. And today we saw, I believe it was Scott McLaughlin hit 242 miles per hour down the backstretch. It was either him or another driver, but it was insane, seeing these qualifying speeds. Always exciting to see qualifying day for the Indianapolis 500.
Qualifying day, one of the best days in all motorsports, and for IndyCar, always a fan favorite because it's such a unique beast. 4 laps flat out around the 2.5 mile Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And at the end of the day, the pole, so many advantages to have that. But the big thing indicating to everyone, you got a fast ride. And that driver showing he has a fast ride, and he's going to be potentially one of the favorites, if not maybe the favorite to win, because he is the defending champion of the NTT IndyCar Series and of last year's run at the Indianapolis 500. Alex Palou took the pole today, away from Alexander Rossi, who surprised many with Air Carpenter Racing getting such a quick lap and holding onto the pole for a while. He will be starting second place. Felix Rosenquist was the last car to go out on track, but he was unable to put a fast lap down and was able to get fourth place, first car in the second row. 4-lap average for Alex Palou, 232.248 miles per hour. The only driver to get a final time above the 232 mile per hour mark. David Malukas, Little Dave, also in the front row in the number 12. He is starting third to round out your top 3 starters of Malukas, Rossi, and your pole sitter, Palou. I have to ask you, if there was any other race weekend in IndyCar, I know people will be saying it's Pullover, and they're picking Alex Palou for pick a winner. But if this is 500 miles, the only 500-mile race of the year for IndyCar, I'm assuming it's not Pullover, correct?
Yes, Joe. I do not believe that is pull over yet because 500 miles, a lot can happen. And with that said, it's still going to be very hard to beat Alex Palou. It's been amazing to see the run that he's been on at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway this last couple of years. Finally getting his maiden oval victory in the biggest race of them all, and finally getting that Indy 500 win on his resume last year, and then coming back the very next year and getting the pole. And every time I say that that Alex Palou has done something I've never seen. I was just very impressed what he was able to do today because after we had the first round of qualifying, he just barely got into the top 12 qualifying session. He was 11th out of 12th on the board, and I'm thinking, okay, that's a nice respectable lap. But nobody expected him to go from 0 to 100 just like that, just barely getting into the top 12. And then he was really the only driver who made massive improvements. Each time out, he went from just barely getting into the top 12 to get into the Firestone Fast Six. And when he made to Fast Six, he was the second fastest. So a big improvement from P11 to P2. And then he went out and stole the pole from everybody else, especially from Felix Rosenqvist. I feel like that was a great opportunity for Felix Rosenqvist to win the pole there, and unfortunately blew it, there in the Firestone Fast Six. Felix, it seemed like that he was the guy to beat, by far after dropping the very quick times in the qualifying session with everyone, then in the top 12. I'm thinking there's no way anyone can beat Felix Rosenqvist. And then Alex Palou goes out there and lays down a massive, 4-lap flyer. And once he put up that big number, I'm thinking, oh, Rosenqvist is the only one going to top it. And then you see the first lap. And after Rosenqvist's first lap, like on 2:31, I'm thinking, yep, this is over. I know we saw some of the drivers, surprisingly, on their third or fourth lap, they picked up big time, which is something you don't traditionally see. Usually you see one big lap and then the lap time, starting to fall off just a little bit. That was one of the biggest surprises today for me, that some of the drivers were actually able to gain on their third and fourth laps and set fast laps in laps 1 or lap 2, because that's something we haven't really seen in Indy 500 qualifying. So I thought that was really strange there. But getting back to the question you're asking, Joe, I do not think it's pullover, but Alex Palou is still going to be extremely hard to beat. But, in a 500-mile race, anything can happen. Like he got screwed in the Sancio Grand Prix last race weekend because when Alexander Rossi's car stalled on the front stretch and got out, forcing the car to throw the full course caution. Then Palou had to, pit, and then he started at the rear of the field. So if Alex Palou gets out to a good lead, and there's like an untimely yellow that puts him deep in the field, that could certainly open the door for someone else to win the Indy 500. So I wouldn't crown Alex Palou just to go back to back at this moment.
Yeah, I think with the prestige of the Indy 500, even if Alex Palou, in my opinion, is the greatest race car driver in the world, especially what he's been able to do these last couple of years, it ain't over till it's over. But when I was watching qualifying, especially the final one, when he put out the first lap of a 232.848, it reminded me of that Kenny Smith iconic call from the dunk contest before I was even born. It's over, ladies and gentlemen. Like, the fact that he came out there and put a near 233 lap 1, Palou is not messing around. And I think he continues to remind people why he is the best in the world. And if he's not the best in the world, he sure as heck is in the top 3. So shout out to Alex Palou. But like you both had just mentioned, it's not pullover, but it might be. But yeah, with Alex Palou too, just want to touch on, I think a lot of people discredited his oval stuff because he had not won. And then he comes out, wins the 500 last year. But like Kobe had alluded to, he's pretty good at the Indy 500. If you look at since 2021, he's never finished outside the top 10 since then. In his first one, he did. But he has finished 2nd, 9th, 4th, 5th, and 1st. This is his second pole, his third start in the top 2. So, I mean, he's got the pace. He's just got to maintain it for 500 miles. And he's clearly shown he is very capable of doing so. So, yeah. Like you guys have just mentioned, it's not pullover, but it might be very soon. So, yeah, that's what happens when you put the greatest driver in the world and probably the best IndyCar. Number 10 machine is definitely the fastest, too. So that's what you get. That's a math equation right there. Best driver, best car equals what Alex Palou has been putting belt to butt on this entire series for the last 4 to 5 years.
Last 4 to 5 years, and of course, he is a defending grid ranking world champion, best in the world. Shout out to a couple drivers that are going to be going for major upsets in the month of May. Kyle Collect 10th place. What an effort by the rookie, highest qualified rookie. He was born in April 2002, which is the same year the 2002 Indy 500 saw Helio Castroneves win that race a month later. Castroneves qualified 15th. But one surprise for me, none of the Andretti Global cars made it into the top 15. You have Marcus Ericsson 18th, Will Power 20th, and Kyle Kirkwood 26th. How surprised were you, Matt, by Andretti's lack of pace in qualifying, and could this lead to a poor Indy 500?
Yeah, I'm very surprised. Also, shout out, finally older than a driver, right? I was born, 9 months before him, probably. So it makes me feel good about myself. But no, it's very surprising, Joe, especially Andretti just being a powerhouse. And not many teams have multiple time Indy 500 champions in their lineup, especially Marcus Ericsson and Will Power both winning this race at least once. So yeah, when you see Ericsson come out in 18th, Will Power, new car 20th, but Kyle Kirkwood being 26th, that doesn't shock me as much. Although I think we can argue if it's not a Palou type of race anywhere, it's Kyle Kirkwood's definitely in the top 3 in this series. At least he has been for the last 2 to 3 years, I would say. So, but for him, he is not good on the Indy Oval. Yeah, he just, if it's bad luck, if it's pace, not sure with Kyle Kirkwood, but just looking at his results here, he's done 4 Indy 500s, 17th, 28th, 7th, and 32nd. Not great performances, and he's never qualified inside the top 10 either. So that part didn't shock me as much as seeing a guy like Marcus Ericsson or a guy like Will Power not qualify in the top 15. But yeah, I it could lead to a poor Indy 500, but you really never know. It's you get a lucky break, something comes out, you pit, other cars don't, or you don't speed like some drivers do on pit road, cost themselves the race, then anything can really happen. But yeah, I'm definitely surprised by the lack of pace, at least in Ericsson and Power. Not so much Kirkwood. This is just something he hasn't figured out yet, and we're going to have to end up clipping this when he comes out and somehow wins the Indy 500 starting in 26. But yeah, curious, Kobe, your thoughts. You've been definitely our go-to guy when it comes to paying attention to all this, so I'm interested to hear what you think about the Andretti pace.
Yeah, and one thing you said about speeding on pit road, it always amazes me when drivers get a pit road speeding penalty in a series that have pit speed limiters. So I've never understood, why that happens when you have that handy device in your back pocket. But yeah, honestly, expected more from Andretti in this qualifying session. Especially Will Power, who is had some great qualifying performances over the years, and obviously some not so great qualifying performances over the years as well at this track. I remember when he was at Team Penske in the last several years. One point, Will Power was in the last row shootout, and we didn't think he was going to make the Indy 500. Which was a real shocker at the time. But 20th, given where Andretti's at, not really a surprise for Will, but Marcus Ericsson, it seemed like that he was the one who had the best pace. Out of all of them, on the no toe. So I thought Marcus Ericsson would probably have a chance. Maybe not necessarily get into the pole round, but I thought at least Ericsson would qualify for the top 12. So I was surprised to see how far down he was, and Kyle Kirkwood. I'm actually quite surprised that he's that far down. Starting outside the top 25. Because if you've been following, the IMS test that happened, and then the practice days, the one car that everyone's been looking at is at number 27, because Kyle Kirkwood looks like that he's had the best car during the month of May so far when it comes to racing conditions. It seemed like that his car is the one that handles best in traffic and the one that can make the best move. So looking ahead towards race day, before this he got buried, in the timing chart and qualifying. Kyle Kirkwood might have been one of your picks to potentially win this race, although he hasn't had the best success in the Indianapolis 500. Matthew just alluded to. Yeah, so given the fact that it looks like he has the best car in race condition, then to get trapped way back there, I think it's gonna be tough for Kyle Kirkwood on a race that come forward. But never say never. We can see drivers come from deep in the field and have a chance to do something special at the Indianapolis 500. Look at Joseph Newgarden last year. When he got sent to the very back, before he had an issue that took him out of the race, Joseph Newgarden had driven all the way into the top 10 from the very last row in the grid. so it shows that it is possible to get towards the front if you have a good car. And if there's onboard footage, of Kyle Kirkwood during this race, given the fact that he has a strong car, that might be the onboard I would want to be looking at, because if that car is still handling well on race day, he could be slicing and dicing his way through the field. I think it'll be real exciting to watch.
A lot of excitement to see what's going to happen at the Indy 500. Of course, don't forget, we'll have pre-race coverage this year. One thing that we didn't have this year, and I felt made a bit of a different vibe, no bump day. 33 entries, so nobody went home. For Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan, that was probably a relief because we saw Graham Rahal, 28th, Mick Schumacher, Graham Rahal, they qualified 28th and 30th. Jacob Abel, who got bumped last year, is in the field. Stingray Robb, 33rd, compared to his teammate Ryan Svike, who made it up to 12th. Joseph Newgarden, not exactly a good day, 24th. And Catherine Legg, who is doing the double, well, she is in the Indy 500, 27th in her Elf Cosmetic car. Overall, we know the month of May is the Indianapolis 500 month, with the testing days, the practice days, qualifying, final practice, the traditional events such as drawing the coins for the qualifying order. We got word about the Weenie 500 is going to be back later on. Considering we had us modify qualifying session though, due to the weather and 33 entries, was it missing a sense of excitement compared to past Indy 500 qualifying weekends?
Well, Joe, I'm actually going to say yes and no to that question, because when it comes to the battle for the pole, I was still extremely entertained by that. I thought we were going to get kind of an upset with the Felix Rosenquist, getting the pole, and then it would turn out to be the Alex Palou show, a continuation of Alex Palou's domination. So I thought that storyline, was really good. And then you see Santino Ferrucci, AJ Foyt racing. They're always strong when it comes to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Santino did not think that they had a car that can contend for the pole, and here he is somehow advancing into the Firestone Fast Six. So I do think that there were a lot of good stories to follow throughout qualifying. So I think when it comes to like the top 12 qualifying in the Firestone Fast Six, I still felt a great sense of excitement, especially seeing the drivers driving the cars on the ragged edge, and one small step away from disaster. I think that's what makes Indianapolis 500 qualifying so exciting, to see what type of big number are those drivers going to put up. So from that standpoint, I thought qualifying was still very exciting, but also I feel like it was missing something. I know people say that as long as you have 33 cars, everything is good and you don't need bumping, but I feel like bump day adds to a lot of the story when it comes to the Indianapolis 500. As I was saying on Grit Tonight a few days ago on Wednesday, this is the only race in the world, more major race in the world where you can show up and not even your 4-time series champion is locked in. The defending champion of the Indianapolis 500, he's not locked in. He would, if you have more than 33 cars, he would have to go race his way in, and then perfect storm, where he has the worst week of his life, he could potentially, miss the race. That what makes it exciting, that not even the biggest stars, the best drivers in your series are locked in, to this event. When we think about, some of the times in recent memory when Kyle Kaiser, Juncos, Hollinger Racing, they sent, Fernando Alonso and McLaren home. That was really exciting. Remember Jack Harvey's last minute run to bump his way into the Indianapolis 500 and bump out his then teammate Graham Rahal. We've seen a lot of exciting moments and bump days in recent years. And just think, if we had more than 33 cars this week, we potentially see a full-time team of Stingray Robb potentially, get bumped from the field. And, obviously, we know Stingray is not necessarily one of the top drivers in the series, but, that is still a full-time chartered team in the IndyCar series. And that would have been quite a story to see one of the full-time teams go home from the Indianapolis 500. So next year, 2027, it'll be the very last year of this car. It is this DW12 chassis that's been around since 2012. That next year in 2027 is going to be the very last Indy 500 we have with this current car and regulations. Since it will be a quote unquote lame duck year, for the DW12 chassis, I hope there's a lot of DW12 sitting around in the world where we can have a big entry list, like one big final send-off for this car would be very special if we get more than 33 entries for the 2027 Indianapolis 500. Not just 34 entries, maybe we can go 35, 36 if they can, just so, we can really get a great bump day. But that was one thing I feel like was missing this year. Very disappointed, that we did not have that last row shootout, because I feel like the intensity of the last row shootout is unlike anything you experience in any type of motor racing all year long.
No, I definitely agree. I think there's a lack of excitement, but only in that part, right? Like, I think that adds that level where there's like, oh, somebody's going home. And I believe this is the first time since 2020, if I'm not mistaken, where there was no bump day. And I guess if you're like Jacob Abel, if you're Stingray Robb, crap, even if you're Dennis Hauger, you're breathing a sigh of relief that you didn't have to deal with this during this event today. And then plus the weather kind of played a factor too with the way they were supposed to do stuff, getting things canceled. And then obviously new rules and regulations and stuff coming in. I feel like it's going to make it even harder to make. I feel like with the new rules and stuff coming in, it's going to change the way we look at it. And then like what Kobe said, hopefully 2027, it's the biggest go big or go home we've seen in recent memory. But you never know with this event. But yeah, at least there was some history, and I think there was a lot of exciting things that still happened. Obviously, Alex Palou becoming the first defending winner to be on pole since Elio Castroneves in 2010. Thought that was pretty cool. And Elio is still in this race and was in fact in the race when one of his competitors was born. So it's crazy to really, like in 2002. So it's crazy to think, that man's just been here forever. And hopefully it would be cool if we saw some more double appearances. I don't know if Elio's ever considering doing the double. That'd be pretty cool. A couple NASCAR guys come over. Obviously, Catherine Legg, super excited. This is one of the last times we'll be able to talk about that before we get to the event. So excited that she made the race. Hopefully, she was going to make it anyway, obviously, but hopefully it continues on. Looking at the weather, though, Friday, Saturday looks like it's supposed to rain, but that's, keep in mind, many, many days ahead. Sunday looks good. So hopefully the racing gods can please allow this to happen. I think it really messed with Kyle Larson's mental capacity on the NASCAR side of things. And as you can see, he has still not won a cup race in over a calendar year. It really messed him up. I know he won a championship, so hopefully it doesn't do the same for Catherine Legg and we just have a great event. But yeah, really, that they were still exciting, like Kobe had mentioned, watching Flo go for it and then thinking that Rosenquist was going to get it, and then eventually you can kind of tell towards the end, like he's going to have to really pull one out of what to get it done, and then he didn't. But hey, still top 4 starting spot for him, right behind Flo. So yeah, there was missing that excitement, but is it really a bad thing that we didn't have to send anyone home? I love the idea working on that side of things, seeing all the time and effort put into this and being able to still be there regardless of what happens. I like that. I hate the idea of sending people home, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, Matthew. And when you're looking at it from the business side, it's a good thing because nobody loses money. Because if you send someone home, that could really hurt that program in such a significant way. So I do understand why having only 33 cars entered and no one going home, it's a good thing for business that we got the traditional 33, and now we could just move forward without hurting a full-time team the rest of their season or a one-off. Whereas they work so hard to run this one race all year long, and then you don't get to participate. Which is obviously very disappointing. And on one note on Catherine Legg and her double attempt, that a fact I mentioned on Wednesday night, very interesting enough, this will be her 5th Indy 500 start in her 4 previous starts. She's never finished on the elite lap in the Indianapolis 500. She's finished it before, but she's never been on the elite lap. So, if she wants to try to become the second person ever and the first woman ever to complete the double, she'll have to finish on the elite lap for the very first time in her IndyCar career.
Yeah, a lot for Catherine Legg to do to make that happen. Indianapolis 500. Big race coming up for the NTT IndyCar Series. Part of a big race weekend in general. I encourage everyone to subscribe. Hit the bell icon so you don't miss any of our coverage during the remainder of the month of May. As we have NASCAR, they're going to get ready for the Coca-Cola 600. The second race Catherine Legg will be doing on that day. And Matthew, we saw the annual NASCAR All-Star Race. Plenty of crashes at Dover. So overall, I think when people think about the Monster Mile, you think of crashes. Okay, some will be saying they were expecting that. A solid showing of fans. I was pleased to see that. The stands were pretty much full. It wasn't until you get to turn 2 you saw some more empty seats, but the main straightaway, turn 3, turn 4, looked well attended, well packed. Denny Hamlin, well, he took the win. One of the big things, Denny Hamlin getting this win, he led a Toyota 1-2-3, which overall that has to be good. But I have to bring up, and I think this is what a lot of people are talking about, considering the racing action we saw, the way the racing played out with the 2 stages and the 3rd stage. I feel this would have been a more compelling event if this was a points race instead of the All-Star, an exhibition race. Do you have that same thought as well?
I think there sure as heck would have been a lot less accidents that early into an event. That was stupid. The fact that we got, 2 to 3 laps in and there was already a red flag, it was just like, here we go. It was kind of one of those things where you have hope and anticipation, which I truly believe everyone here had a lack thereof, all those things. But yeah, the fact that they went in and just wrecked and then wrecked again. And then I absolutely hate the fact that you had guys like Chase Elliott, guys like Ross Chastain, who could not even start the race because they were involved in other messes. I would argue Ross Chastain did it to himself, but Chase Elliott twice was just on the wrong end of it. But yeah, it might have been different. The results probably wouldn't have been. I think without that shuffle, guys like Bubba Wallace, guys like Tyler Reddick would have been able to stay up front before, like Bubba Wallace being involved in that accident with Keselowski and Reddick, or Keselowski and Chastain, I'm sorry, wouldn't have been even near there for that. So sucks to take out a guy like that. But yeah, it was Hamlin, belt to butt, all race long. I think he owns this track, like literally in the at the other events here. He's won at least the last 2, now the last 3 if you include the All-Star race. So yeah, Dover's not my favorite facility. I think if you're a Speedway Motorsports, you have a bunch of other tracks you probably could have listed for this event. And it is crazy that for decades this track had 2 races, then the last half decade it's had 1, and now it has just an exhibition race. But I think it was Mike Joy kept saying over and over and over again that Dover will be back. I don't know what it's going to be back for. I don't know what I want it back for at the Cup level. I don't mind it in the O'Reilly Series or Truck Series, or crap, even bring ARCA there. But at the Cup level, it was exciting when they weren't wrecking, I guess. But I felt like, I think I share the same opinion as some of my colleagues here. It just felt like it dragged on really, really long. And yeah, so it could have been more compelling as a points race, but I think Hamlin would have probably put belt to belt like he did anyway. And I'm not going to repeat some of the comments we had in the chat that were very funny in our Slack chat, but that's how I probably felt too about this race. It was just too long, it felt like. Why was the format like that, Joe? I'm curious to hear. I know you thought it would have been better as a points race. I don't really disagree. I don't really agree. I don't really have a thought on that. Dover's just not my thing. But yeah, the fact that it was 350 laps at Dover, it's like, did we need that in the next gen era?
And that's the thing. I felt, we know the All-Star race, NASCAR likes to experiment with stuff, different setups, different tire rules. I mean, that was the first time we ever saw the option tire concept idea was at an All-Star race. The one thing, though, yes, it's very easy to say, okay, if this was a points race, we wouldn't have the crashes like we saw. And potentially Denny Hamlin would have just dominated the race, because we've seen drivers in the past dominate this race. That's why I think it has a little bit of a reputation of, oh, it's Dover. We're not really thrilled about going to Dover. It just seems really odd because it is in such a unique market. I feel Dover is one of those races where it's big for the sport, but at the same time, it always just seems to be the race. It's on FX. It's on Fox Sports 1. It's not on the big broadcast. At 350 laps compared to when this is a 400 lap points race, Last year, no, it went to overtime, 407 laps. But at that point, it's like, well, why are we doing it? It almost felt like they're trying something different with the stages. A long 200 lap stage. Yeah, I know they had the All-Star caution, but we saw how that sort of produced to where the tire strategy came in. The fact that on the air they even said, because you didn't see the green and white checker flag, they were treating each race as its own separate race. I couldn't help but think, what if this could somehow be NASCAR's idea of thinking, like, how do we change stage racing a little bit, where the results are factored into the starting of a longer final stage that's about half race distance? I'm just really curious to see what NASCAR is thinking, and I mean, we'll see. I just feel like at the end of the day, though, this All-Star race, once known as the Winston, it seemed to have regained some of the excitement after the move to North Wilkesboro. But we had a lack of excitement entering this race weekend, and it felt like just a normal Sunday afternoon, which I guess adds to this could have been a more compelling race with the points, especially with Tyler Reddick being up front, didn't have any issues, falling out. If this was a points race, we'll be talking about his points lead coming down. Granted, Ryan Blaney already had crashed out at that point. No lights at this event, and I feel under the lights just makes something a little bit more special. What is the future for the All-Star race? Do we even need it anymore in modern day NASCAR?
I don't think all-star events are necessary really in any sport, but I think for NASCAR, I feel like that's an event where you have, like you had just mentioned, Joe, try new things. And I feel like the only thing they tried was a stupid 2-segment with every car in the field. I love the idea. I really did. So I probably get some flack for this, but I love the idea of inverting the field. I didn't love the idea that guys like Chase Elliott and Ross Chastain, because of that stuff, were affected and couldn't actually race for $1 million. That's what I didn't like. So I guess there was 14 driver or at least 20 that weren't like technically locked in. I think if you bring back the heat races, but if you did that same format, like you did the 75 lap, but only have the guys who are not qualified in and then invert the field, reminded me a lot of what SRX used to do. I thought that was pretty cool. I really did enjoy that part. But then when you had to start race 2 with the top 5 not being able to start the race because they were all in the garage, that was a no-no. And I guess if you're going to keep SMI or Speedway Motorsports allowed to control where the event takes place, they own, 11 tracks on the NASCAR schedule currently. I guess 10 because of Kentucky, whenever that may come back. So shout out Kentucky. But you could probably pick many of the other ones, and it would probably put on a better event than Dover. I just think it just didn't live up to the hype, as there wasn't really any hype. You saw guys like Bubba Wallace, Chase Elliott, Ryan Blaney, all were like, yeah, it doesn't really feel like, the All-Star races this weekend type of deal. So I don't know where they could really bring it. I love the idea of Charlotte, don't get me wrong, but I also like Charlotte's prestige of having the main events, but like never bring it back to Texas. Probably don't bring it back to Dover. I don't want to see it at Echo Park, to be honest with you. Nobody would go if it was in New Hampshire. I'm just looking at all the tracks now. Bristol, they've done it before. I don't think that really turned out as well as people liked it to. North Wilkesboro, I just realized that they have brought this race to all of these damn tracks that I am looking at. So clearly they've thought of this. So you're not going to bring it to Sonoma. But yeah, maybe, I know Rockingham's back on the schedule. Could that be another potential thing? Bring it to a track. I like the idea of bringing it to a track that is either like not on the schedule. I guess you could say Dover's not on the schedule. Something that brings homage to the sport, where the 25 car field at most actually makes sense versus trying to put all 40 cars at, like, say, in North Wilkesboro. Not looking forward to that at all. So we'll see. But yeah, I'm curious what they do. I'm curious your thoughts as well, Joe, the future of this event. It's definitely dying for sure. There wasn't that same level of excitement that we have seen in years prior.
Yeah, the excitement has not been there, and I feel while North Wilkesboro gave it some new energy, it was still not the same. And frankly, I felt really this has been going on for a long time. I would even say maybe 2005, 2006. I just felt like it was starting to lose a lot of its excitement from the original years. And where does this event fit in? Well, we know there's always talks about costs, cutting costs for the teams. Do we really need an exhibition race and it's not at the same place as the Coca-Cola 600? That's where I really wonder if maybe just returning back to how it was might be this answer. We know the month of May, that is Indianapolis, the Indy 500 for motorsports fans. But when you talk about something for the NASCAR fan, I think what we used to have before with the Coca-Cola 600, but the week before the Winston, if you're a family coming to Charlotte, you're a bunch of race fans coming, you could just stay that week there, have events throughout the week for all the NASCAR fans, and then the Coca-Cola 600. I think that might be something where, with this generation of car, we know how good of a product we get at Charlotte Motor Speedway. Maybe it can't hurt to just say, hey, we're going to go back to Charlotte Motor Speedway for 2027, see how it goes. If I could give my thoughts on the race format, have the what you had before when it was the Winston format and it worked so well. You have the open drivers that haven't won a race, transfer spots. You then have that break. That's where you do the driver introduction. With the driver introduction, then you have 3 stages. Don't need to muddy it up too much. Don't need to make it too complicated. If you really want to, you could do the invert the field in the second heat. And I would call them heats, not stages, just because I'm sometimes feel like it gets really confusing with heat stages and all that. And shorten it to where that third stage is back to a 10-lap shootout, like how it used to be. We don't need such a long race. Really, that first heat could be won with the mandatory pit stop. The second race, just long enough where if there's a caution, you could make pit stop for tower strategy. And then the third one, 10 laps, show what you got, go to race to finish. I think we might have something that, hey, this is a short event. It's fun. It kicks off the week of racing leading up to the Coca-Cola 600 in Charlotte Motor Speedway in the Concord, Charlotte area. I think that could be really fantastic. Just make it where, at least for that week, people know, hey, if we're going to Charlotte, if we go, we can see 2 races. And for the teams, make it where, all of them could be able to, hey, we got this nice break. We're traveling a lot less. We're cutting costs in that aspect. Other than that, though, I almost just assign me that's like, if they're not going to do that, maybe shelf it, or I don't know, but it's just something where I feel like maybe returning back to the basics might be a big help. One thing I would say would also probably be a big help too, and I think this was part of the shift too, is whoever's doing the coverage of this event. Now, I know Dover, we had all 3 series, Cup, Draftsman Truck Series, NASCAR O'Reilly Auto Parts Series. You're going to be recapping the Trucks and O'Reilly Series tomorrow, Matt, on Grid Rising, right here on YouTube. Good racing. I was able to catch parts of the O'Reilly race yesterday at the airport when I was in Atlanta. I know Dover, has been dominated. We talked about that before, but it just seemed like, okay, this weekend was something else. But it's also the last weekend of NASCAR on Fox. The NASCAR Cup Series coverage moves over to Amazon Prime. So overall, we saw Fox introduce more graphics. They dropped the comic book characters. How would you grade their coverage for 2026?
Not very nicely. Probably in the C minus range at most. And I think a lot of it is because I think the reporting is done really well. Like when they throw it to Amanda, when they throw it to Josh, those guys and gals, I think they do a really good job. But it's just the truck series needs a definite change in their booth, in my opinion. I think Tanner and I will touch on that. Unfortunately, Fox Sports and Fox Sports 1 specifically has the entire truck series, just like the O'Reilly series has, well, the CW has them. But for Cup, I mean, even in this race, there were guys like a Bubba Wallace, guys like Kyle Larson that weren't mentioned once, that they were just randomly off the track in the 200 lap, I guess, the main event. It's like, where'd they go? Like, they miss a lot of stuff. And I know it's hard. I think one of the broadcasters had mentioned either on social media, TV, something like that, said that a lot of the people that work for Fox Production are remote. They're not really there, and they don't have a lot of people. They should probably fix that. I think that would really help them in the long run. I think the race control has done a significantly better job than they have been before, up until last week, I believe it was, with a certain incident, probably the weeks prior. But yeah, I thought they have done a great job. But yeah, Fox just is the lowest man on that totem pole of sports broadcasting. I just do not enjoy it. I'm very happy that we are leaving Fox, at least for until 2027 at the Cup level. I know trucks, we still have to deal with them, but yeah, you got to do what you got to do. Money talks. And I'm happy. I think they do a lot better in IndyCar than they have at the NASCAR Cup level. I don't know if it's the on-air talent they have or if it's just what goes into the event. Because I think, no offense to IndyCar, but I think NASCAR costs a lot more, and it's definitely more. They try to make it more in depth, if that makes sense. Because I believe when they were negotiating all the contracts, they said something along the lines like almost a full IndyCar season costs like 1 or 2 NASCAR races to broadcast. So something insane like that. So yeah, their graphics a lot better. I enjoy their graphics a lot, especially no cartoon characters. But I have noticed they're starting to use a little more AI on the social media side of things, which is good and bad, I guess you could say. Especially the Buxton and Harvick podcasts. They're using a lot of AI for their stuff. But yeah, a lot of the name bugs and stuff are significantly better. And just Fox's coverage, hopefully they can learn from this. We can't get rid of them entirely, I should say. But yeah, C minus maybe I would give them. And that might be a generous thing to them. But you're curious if you have the same thoughts. I think a lot of people would be more harsh than I was, but a lot of people probably nicer too.
Definitely not on the nicer side. If I had to give them a grade, I have to give them a D. I wouldn't give them an F just because I'm failing. That means they're to the point where they're screwing up. But here's my, I guess, laundry list of issues I have with Fox coverage. I feel you look at what they were in 2001, 2, 3, and what it is 2024, 2025, and this year. It just feels like it's just a canned product of the same approach week after week, nothing different. You have the pre-race coverage. With the pre-race coverage, there's some topics where they're talking about it's just not taken as seriously enough compared to like NFL on Fox or other sports on Fox. Heck, the IndyCar pre-race coverage before Arlington, I think, was a great example of what they could be doing with the NASCAR on Fox. Do we really need the grid walk? I mean, I get it. It seems like everyone's doing that, trying to capitalize on Martin Brundle. But Michael Waltrip is just not the... I mean, it's just almost cringy just watching that. Getting back to the canned product, it just seems like it's the same pattern. We start with the green flag. Okay, that's great. Some point, probably before or after the pit stops, we go to Jamie Little, talk about a certain team's pit crew. Then we see the little pit debrief in the hall or before, where the crew chief or the pit crew all say something motivating, and then they go out there and do what they need to do. Then we have the stage cautions. Those are always the same. We always have the side-by-sides But for racing, that's occurring on track when it's green. It seems like we don't wait for the yellow or use them during a stage caution. We always have the ones to watch, same spot as always. We have Toyota All Out, which they say, okay, we will show a Toyota commercial, but instead we're going to follow just the Toyota drivers, talk about the Toyota drivers, show twice the Toyota All Out graphic, and then when it's time to go commercial, we'll probably still see a Toyota commercial. The mass amount of sponsorships they have from the Capital One, what is it? White Flag, Credit One Bank, to the reports that they have brought to you by this sponsor, that sponsor, is just like, my goodness, they've really have commercialized. And I get it, like you said, it's because the money. NASCAR took a huge deal. So Fox wants to make up that money, make up that investment, and especially if the ratings are not there, best way to do it, product placement, putting sponsorship up, that leads to some of the things I feel they're missing with their canned product. Lack of pit road reporting. If you watch Fox pre-2005, and if you watch ESPN, TNN, CBS, they will more frequently go to the pit road reporters, given updates. It just seems like it's maybe so few we're missing out on what's going on with the strategy, what's going on with the cars. We don't know a lot of it because we don't hear from it from pit road, except when it comes to the pit stops. And quite often, when it's pit stops, it's still very often Mike Joy, Kevin Harvick, Clint Boyer making the call. They don't go to Jamie Little or Regan Smith. You watch in the back when it was ESPN, Dr. Jerry Punch, Jan Beekes, if it was IndyCar, they were always the go-to, and they will even bring out some reports. We don't see that much. How often they miss the action on the track where it's late crashes that we didn't see or even get mention of. A lot of people look at Watkins Glen and what happened to Cody Ware and the wall being damaged. We're missing those kind of events. We see, if you're not up there towards the front, good luck getting mentioned. How many times have we heard of Ricky Stenhouse this year, or the Live Fast Racing Chevrolets in 78? They don't do that great of a job, in my opinion, covering all of the teams. Some people remember in 2001, their little mess between sponsors that were part of Fox, whether through different avenues, and other cars that did have sponsors. So they would use that with their little commercialized cars, and then NASCAR to step in and say, no, you got to show all the sponsors some of those computer-generated cars, and they did. So I just feel like Fox really is just what I would say is NASCAR's weakest link when it comes to broadcasting, and especially when you see the commercial that uses AI and the cars don't look like what they're supposed to look like. And the fact that the commercial count, even if the numbers show like, oh, they have a little less commercials or they got more side-by-sides, it is so ridiculous, the number of commercials. And in an era where you're seeing Formula One commercial-free, even though now that they switched to Apple TV, the pre-race, post-race is no longer commercial-free, but at least the race is commercial-free, thankfully. Where you have the World Cups coming up, that's going to be commercial-free. You have cars with the billboards of on their hoods, essentially. You have tracks where they got billboards. Product placement. Is there really a better way where we could reduce the commercials down, especially on green flag? Okay, if yellow flag comes out at Watkins Glen, that'd be a great time to go to commercial. It's such a big track. By the time you show a couple commercials, okay, they're doing pit stops, then go back to commercials. I just really feel there's a lot of improvement, and I feel Fox has been complacent. They know they got this big deal. They know they're just going to be overall having this product. They have the audience. I just feel like there's no incentive for them to get better. Maybe Amazon Prime, CW could really show like what it could be, because a lot of people loved Amazon Prime last year, and I still won't forget it. Sirius XM, when people were calling like, oh, we love Amazon Prime. and it was on the program with Daniel Trotta and Larry McReynolds. And Larry tried to say, well, you can't compare Fox and Amazon Prime because they're too different. Fox is on traditional broadcast television. Amazon Prime is not. You got a point there. They are different. But that doesn't mean Fox could just say, oh, Amazon Prime's coverage we cannot do. Yeah, you can. You could do a better job covering it. That's what Amazon Prime did. Come on, Fox. Let's go back to where we were in 2001, 2002, 2003, where fans were excited that, hey, you guys were bringing in great coverage, and they had a chip on their shoulder. They replaced ESPN, which really was a longtime partner. CBS Sports, ABC. Now, gee whiz, I think a lot of people will say, hey, we'll be excited to see Fox leave, and especially if we get somebody that will take the sport a little bit more seriously rather than just make it as jokes, use it for AI, and just give us a canned product every week that is almost predictable. So overall, a D for Fox for me. Sounds a bit harsh, but I mean, once we see Amazon Prime, if they delivered the same results last year, it's going to be a fun few races with Amazon Prime. That was sort of my long rant. As you can tell, I've been holding a lot in when it comes to NASCAR and Fox, but with that said, we'll conclude the Fox portion. Well, not the Fox portion, the NASCAR portion of this program. We'll bring Kobe in because we got Formula E and then the grid ranking.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of races this weekend. One had a doubleheader, and that was Formula E in Monaco. The Formula E Monaco E-Prix doubleheader saw two new winners, with Nick DeVries and Oliver Rowland taking the win. In fact, Nick DeVries' first victory in nearly 5 years, so shout out to him. Mitch Evans had a second-place finish as well as a fourth-place finish to take the points lead by 19 points over past champion Oliver Rowland. Pascal Wehrlein dropped after scoring no points during the weekend, which became a shock to many. We are now past the halfway point through this season, and there are only 7 races left. You kind of always forget how fast Formula E goes. And right now, all 20 drivers are still mathematically eligible for the championship. That's why you got to love this sport. All 20 drivers have now scored points after Monaco, with Degrassi having a strong weekend this past weekend. So I'm going to throw this first question and only question to you, Joe. Mitch Evans has now been on an 8 race point streak after starting the year with nothing, counting 2 wins. And I guess for you, your thoughts, who are the 3 to 5 drivers you think he has to beat in order to win this championship?
I think right now there are 5 drivers he has to beat. For Mitch Evans to claim his first Formula E World Championship, you have to beat Oliver Rowland. If he could get consistent again, he shows he could get those wins, he's going to be very hard. Pascal Wehrlein had a rough weekend, but we know he could rebound, come back. Another driver, Nick Cassidy, I'm really curious. He's starting to put together some good runs here and there. I think it's just a matter of time until he figures it out. Those are the 3 drivers I feel he really has to watch. I'm going to throw in one driver that I feel is a surprise and one driver that is the main driver he has to watch. A bit of a surprise, but you look at the points he's doing well. Eduardo Montara with the Mahindra. The fact that Mahindra got a win this weekend with Nick DeVries and Montara having a solid season, being consistent, he could continue down. If he could step it up and get a win, he could compete for a championship. It's been a long time since he was with Venturini. We saw him last with a chance at the championship. The other driver, and this is the one where really, if he gets everything going together, he could get the job done because he has 2 wins. Antonio Felix da Costa, his teammate. He did not have that good a weekend, lost some ground, but he knows how to win. He's done it twice this year. Only other person did it twice is his teammate, Mitch Evans. I'm starting to think Mitch Evans, unless he has a loss in form, this might be it. This might be finally the year he could enter the last leg of the season with the championship lead and hopefully not have a repeat of Berlin years ago where his car stalled and he lost it to Eduardo Montara, who crashed into him, and the two of them lost the championship. to Nick DeVries. So let's see what happens. But those are the drivers I feel Evans has to watch and outperform.
Yeah, we're looking at Mitch Evans. It's been amazing to see how consistent he's been throughout this season. And when we were talking about his upcoming departure from Jaguar, we were wondering, could he go out and win a championship in a lame duck year? And it looks like the answer to that question is yes. He looks like he certainly can, and he's really one of the only Formula E drivers out there who's extremely consistent. Outside of Eduardo Mortara, who's mentioned, Joe, has been very consistent this season, and Oliver Rowland, he's been up and down. Like one week it seemed like he's on the podium, and next week he's out of the points. So if Oliver Rowland can start being a lot more consistent and get those finishes that he should be getting, he could very well be a championship contender and try to take the fight to Mitch Evans and try to go back to back in the Formula E World Championship. As you know, Rowland ended up getting the second race in Monaco earlier today, so that helps. But when we come back to Formula E, I believe they'll be going to China for the next 2 race weekends. We'll need Oliver Rowland to be finishing in the points again and getting on the podiums. Because it's not a good thing that 1 week he's on the podium and the next week he's down in like 15th place or something like that. That's something that he'll need to avoid if he wants to defend his Formula E World Championship. Pascal Wehrlein, not the weekend he wanted at all. Before Monaco, he was running pretty well outside of a 19th place finish in race 1 at Berlin. He was finishing 8th or better, really good for Pascal. And in Monaco, he didn't finish on the point in either race. But I think if he can bounce back, and start, finishing well again, he could very well be a contender in the championship. And just looking at where the points are right now for Mitch Evans, I think his main contenders are going to be the drivers who are 2nd, 3rd, and 4th in the championship, which are Roland Mortar and Pascal Wehrlein. I feel like Nico Muller and Antonio Felix da Costa and down. Never say never, but we only have 4 race weekends left. We have I believe the Sanya E-Prix, the Shanghai E-Prix, Tokyo, and then also London. So you're really running out of time to try to make ground in this championship.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. I think really only Evans, Rowland, and Mortar are probably going to be it. It's like you mentioned, I think it is so hilarious to see the top 2 in the standings. Like a guy like Evans started off without any points in the first 2 rounds, and then all of a sudden was like, I'm just going to keep scoring. And then you have Oliver Rowland, who is like, I'm either on the podium or I am nowhere near scoring points. And there really is no in between for him. And I find that super hilarious. But Mortar as well, I think if he can continue it, he's kind of been on a downhill slope, but I think he had a great qualifying effort. I picked him for pick a winner. I thought he was going to do well. Fortunately, P5 for him. You never can count on a guy like Pascal Wehrlein. But then you look at the rest of these guys. I think the inevitable Nick Cassidy hot streak is coming. I just don't know when it's going to be. It's obviously going to be too late, but it wouldn't shock me if someone like Nick Cassidy with the new team is currently 7th in points, already has a win. There is, 7 rounds left? He probably wins 3 of them, but he's just going to be too far behind. He'll probably DNF the other 4. That's just that's how Nick Cassidy is for some reason. But yeah, overall, I agree with you guys. I really think this is Evans' year to kind of go out on a high note. And I'm confident, especially after this past weekend, back-to-back top 4 finishes for him. I think he's got to keep that up. But there were some other good obviously, shout out Nick DeVries, first win in almost 5 years. Felipe Drugovich, P4 and P2. We talked about another guy, P2, P4. But yeah, Felipe going from not scoring at all this season to 3 rounds in a row with a P9, P4, P2 finish. So really shout out to him. And yeah, that's really all I have. Unless you guys have anything else additional to add about Formula E, then if not, I will gladly kick it over to Joe to wrap it up with one of my favorite things, the grid ranking.
Yeah, the grid ranking, lots of going on when it comes to it, but this weekend a rather quiet one just because we only had Formula E and MotoGP were the point scoring events. As was mentioned, when it came to the sprint race, Alex Marquez got that win. Fabio Di Giannantonio got the MotoGP race win. So for Marco Bezzecchi, who didn't get any win, first time we did not see a single Aprilia rider on the top step anywhere he slipped out at 20-point range, so he fell from second to third behind Tyler Reddick. Of course, NASCAR, the All-Star Race does not count towards the grid ranking, so score remains unchanged for him. But yeah, so the top two of Kimi Antonelli, Tyler Reddick are both in the 20-point range, while Marco Bezzecchi dropped down. Jorge Martin also dropped down. He fell out of the top 10. Christian Lundgaard from IndyCar is now in the top 10. Martin's tied with Fabio Di Giannantonio for 11th. And of course, there was more changes outside of the top 15 with most of the Formula E drivers there because of the lack of consistency, as you brought up, where, I mean, gee whiz, 10 races in, only 2 drivers have 2 wins. Everybody else have a single win. I sometimes debate about bringing back the Wheel of Destiny for Formula E. But Kobe, let's start with you on this one. Were you surprised by Marco Bezzecchi and Jorge Martin have a not so great weekend at Catalunya?
Yeah, I was very surprised. I thought both Aprilia factory riders would have been a lot stronger this race weekend, especially, with Marquez out of the picture. And then we're saying on the last time MotoGP race that we feel like Bezzecchi and Martin, that just could be a battle between them until the very end. But unfortunately, they weren't in the fight this weekend. And especially Jorge Martin, he had quite a disastrous weekend. I believe he crashed out in the sprint race on Saturday. And then earlier today, ended up crashing out again. And it made it worse. He collided with his satellite, Aprilia teammate and away from Trackhouse, Raul Fernandez. That ended Jorge Martin's race. And then there was a really ugly sight in the garage, with Jorge Martin screaming at his team bosses and the team, which I still do not understand many hours later why Jorge Martin was completely losing his mind to his team. I don't understand he was frustrated because he felt like he had a bike, that could have done something in this race and potentially been a contender for the podium or for the win. But there's no reason for him to lose his composure and flip out on his team the way he did, because they did nothing to him. That was an incident that happened on the racetrack, and I said his team only working prepare the bike. Like they don't like it's just a weird situation there. Did not cast him in the best light, but to his credit, he did apologize after the fact for his behavior and realized how that cast him in a negative light. So when MotoGP gets back on track the next round, hopefully Jorge Martin will be able to keep his cool and continue with the championship fight. I know his teammate Marco Bezzecchi, did not necessarily have the best race weekend as well, but both Aprilia riders still at the top of the MotoGP rider standings, and they're both gonna still have a chance to go out there and compete for the championship. Despite Martin not having a great weekend, he's still only a handful of points back where he can, still take the fight to Marco Bezzecchi. But not the weekend that Aprilia riders were expecting, especially Jorge Martin. I'm glad he realized he did not look good in that moment, just screaming at his team.
Yeah, I agree, Kobe. I think self-reflection is probably the best thing in that case. I would say it definitely does surprise me that Bezzecchi and Jorge Martin just did not do as well as they could have done. I was more shocked. I know not really part of the question. I think is Acosta in the ranking, but I really felt like this was his week. He doesn't have a win this year. I really thought he was going to get multiple podium finishes, and he just did not do it. And it just sucks for him to have a bad weekend as well. But yeah, that's kind of how it goes. I think Kobe answered that pretty perfectly. I don't really have much to add. I think he might have some more things to add too. But yeah, other than that, didn't shock me as much. I think this is going to be a more competitive year for the grid ranking than we've seen. We had one a couple years ago that was incredibly close, but I don't think we're going to have a Palou or a Marc Marquez type of season from any series, really. So, yeah, I'm curious to hear, Joe, your thoughts, and Kobe, if you have any other comments as well.
You want to go first, Joe, and then I'll go with some news we have?
Yeah, I'm just going to quickly say Pedro Acosta, that was a surprise, especially he's so close to a win. But the last few races, it seems like he's been sort of missing. So I really thought the sprint race, like, oh, he's going to be contender for the win. Well, we know what happened at Grand Prix. Hopefully KTM will rebound back. But, yeah, big shock to see Aprilia nowhere there. KTM, they were there. So we might have a championship fight on hand. But let's go to Kobe, who we believe has some breaking news.
Yeah, breaking news from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway just a short while ago. Penske Entertainment sent out an email to media saying that Kyle Collette and Jack Harvey have failed post-qualifying inspection for the Indianapolis 500. So both of those drivers will be sent to the rear next Sunday for the 110th run of the greatest spectacle in racing. And just to read from the press release here, so everyone has all the information, IndyCar officiating has announced post-qualifying technical inspection penalties for the entries of the number 4 of AJ Foyt Racing and the number 24 of Dry and Rumble Racing during post-qualifying inspection. The numbers 4 and 24 IndyCar officiating discovered modifications to the Dallara supplied energy management system EMS covers and covered to A-arm mounting points with unapproved hardware. According to the IndyCar rulebook, EMS covers must be used as supplied. And so IndyCar officiating determined that AJ Foyt Racing and Dry and Rumble, these two cars of Colette and Harvey, they violated 2 rules where the EMS must be used as supplied by the Dallara and approved by IndyCar, and EMS covers may only be attached with the supplied hardware and helicopter tape. And as a result, both cars and drivers, have had their qualifying results disallowed, and they'll be and have been reordered to the rear of the field in order of entrant points. And additionally, the number 4 car, Kyle Collette, had its 3 Indy 500 qualification points disallowed, and subsequently, the number 9 car, Scott Dixon, and the number 76 car, Renus VK, will be awarded 11th and they'll be awarded 10th and 11th place Indy 500 qualification points. And it also says that car number 75 of Takuma Sato is ineligible for qualification points because he did not make it to top 12 qualifying. Sato was the first one to miss out in 13th place. And so cars 4 and 24 will also forfeit their pit positions and will select their pit boxes after the remainder of the field had an opportunity to adjust accordingly. So that's the breaking news, guys. I don't know if you guys want to react that Kyle Collette and Jack Harvey have been disqualified from Indy 500 qualifying. I know Kyle Collette, big blow to him because he's been like one of the star rookies during the month of May. And a lot of people were very impressed with the speed that he was able to show today in qualifying and during the entire month of May. And, Jack Harvey, it's the only race he has a year now since he's full-time on pit road with IndyCar and Fox. And Harvey, he's shown a lot of speed alongside his Dry and Rumble teammate Connor Daly throughout the month of May as well. I think Jack Harvey said that he would have been able to have a better qualifying time today if it wasn't for like an issue with like the gear. And we know it was just a one-shot qualifying today. You didn't see multiple runs like we've seen. So, Harvey was already had a disappointing qualifying spot. Now it's just got worse because him and Collette are at the back of the field.
Yeah, I'll go quickly with my thoughts. For Collette, AJ Foyt Racing, I'm curious, what's the story behind this? I mean, this is a team that runs full-time. Honestly, no issue with their faster teammate, Santino Ferrucci. So I wonder if there's some sort of oversight or they just try to find a little bit of competitive edge. But when it's something as specific as has to be supplied by Dallara and approved by IndyCar, this does not seem like something where it's just, oops, we didn't know that occurred. What a tough break. Lose your pit crew, use your pit selection until the entire field does. And then for Jack Harvey, drawing Ryan Bolt Racing, I just feel like, okay, particularly we're talking about helicopter tape. I'm curious if that was something this team's not running full time, some sort of error there. But overall, tough break for both of them, and just a bit shocking to hear. It's not often we hear that. And imagine we had bump day. I don't know how this would have changed everything.
Yeah, I was just gonna add. Imagine if there was bump day. Who does? Assume Jack Harvey would probably be the one who would get bumped. And yeah, it's funny how Kobe, you guys were talking on Grid tonight how the Dry and Reinbolt Racing guys could be a legit threat, and then now one's getting disqualified from qualifying to have to start in the rear of the field because of stuff. So it's like, damn, kind of a nice turnaround there for them. And yeah, it sucks for Collette as well. I mean, to start 10th in your Indy 500 debut, right? And then to get DQ'd because of something, to have to go start, I assume would be 32nd now. So not great. Losing those valuable points too. Not fun. But yeah, crazy breaking news to come. Glad it happened while we were live on air versus when we could clip. So I guess we'll have to add this part to our clipped clipped IndyCar sections when they go live on YouTube. So yeah, crazy breaking news. Sucks for them. But yeah, when you have a Dry or Reinbolt Racing, it's like, hopefully, I guess, don't touch Connor Daly's car. I think he thinks it could be his year. So I guess with Jack Harvey, sucks. Obviously, the one race he does a year when he's not on pit road. But yeah, any of your personal thoughts on that one, Kobe?
Yeah, I basically said everything I needed to say there. It was just for Kyle Collette, you really feel for him because he's had a terrific month of May and maybe could have contended for a top 10 finish, and now since he's going to be on the very last row of the grid, might be difficult for him to try to make his way to the front. And then Jack Harvey, just another blow after thing didn't go well for qualifying for him today with the issue with the car that they didn't get to fix in time, obviously, and now he's going to be starting dead last in 33rd position. But like they say, nowhere to go but up. And as long as I guess it's best to have a disqualification now because you don't want to have one when Indy 500 happened. Because you remember, I believe Marcus Ericsson got disqualified from the Indianapolis 500, and Alex Palou was the one who made the late pass on him to win the Indy 500. And we talked about it at the time. Could you imagine if Palou didn't pass Ericsson and he won the 500 and got disqualified? It would have been really bad to have the winner of the biggest race in the world get disqualified. I don't know if that's ever happened in the history of the Indianapolis 500.
Yeah, if you have to make a mistake and end up being disqualified, qualifying would be where you would prefer it. Not ideal, but yeah, that is just going to be something, an uphill battle for both of those drivers. Probably a little bit of a little less pressure, especially for Collette being a rookie. You can only go up, just race the racetrack, take care of the car. For Jack Harvey, I think almost the same thing. Just go have fun, see what you could do. Let's see what we could bring this car home. So we'll follow it all. Any additional updates, of course, Wednesday Grid tonight and more racing recap tomorrow on Grid Rising. Let's go ahead and end off the show, Kobe, with our shining moments.
Yeah, it's time for a great one shining moment from this racing weekend. So let us know down in the chat what's the one thing that stood out to you, whether it was from MotoGP in Catalunya, the NASCAR All-Star Race in Dover, Formula E in Monaco, or Indianapolis 500 qualifying. And Joe, I'll start off with you. What's your one shining moment?
My shining moment, I think overall, it has to come from Formula E, and I'm looking at Nick de Vries getting this long overdue win, because at the end of the day, this is a former champion of Formula E. He was a rising star with the Mercedes Formula E team. Then he gets the opportunity to substitute for Alex Albon in F1 in Monza. Goes great. Gets a ride with Toro Rosso, which was then already AlphaTauri, which we all know now as Visa Cash Out Racing Bulls. Nick de Vries is one of those drivers that I feel after what happened with AlphaTauri lost some of that confidence, has lost a lot of the perception of being one of the best drivers, because a lot of people just saw him as he couldn't cut in F1 and he hasn't done anything since coming back to Formula E. But we know that team of Mahindra, it was rebuilding. For a while, they went from a team getting wins with Felix Rosenqvist to a team not getting the wins. Well, now they got Eduardo Montoro and they got Nick de Vries. And again, we're starting to see the progress. And I feel Nick de Vries getting that win shows he can still get the job done and he can still go out there and get a win. So he is my shining moment, Nick de Vries.
Yeah, Joe, it's hard to disagree with you there. I think Nick de Vries is definitely a one shining moment. Any driver that can go out and win after not winning for 4 to 5 years, and really anything for him. Obviously, Formula One stint just didn't work out. It's a couple other ones we'll touch on Grid Rising. A lot to talk about. Can read through here very quickly. Grid Rising, we have O'Reilly, Trucks, ARCA, NASCAR Mexico, NASCAR Canada, ARCA, Wheeling Modified, and Cars Southwest Tour. So a lot of stuff to talk about, a lot of great shining moments. So I'll save those for that. But yeah, besides Nick de Vries, you could argue Alex Palou being the first Indianapolis 500 winner the next year to be on pole since Elio Castroneves in 2010. I think that's something we should shine a moment on. And I think with me too, I would say Eric Jones finishing third in the NASCAR All-Star Race. I think Eric Jones deserves a lot better of a hand than he's been dealt in his Cup career, especially the last 6-7 years when he got forced out of Joe Gibbs, inevitably going to legacy, and then just not, well, Rich Petty at the time. So yeah, for him to finish third in the All-Star race, he made a comment saying something along the lines like, "It's been a while since I've run up here with these guys, but hopefully I can continue to do it." Never like to hear that from a guy who I believe is as talented as Eric Jones, but those are my kind of grid shining moments. But yeah, Nick DeVries, I think, definitely takes the top of that shining moment podium.
Yeah, for me, my shining moment has to go to Connor Zilic for the top 5 he got today at Dover. I know it's been a difficult rookie season for him in the NASCAR Cup Series, and I know this is not going to count, officially in the record book since it is an exhibition event in the All-Star race. But I think, heading into the summer months here, that this top 5 for Connor Zilic, can be really huge for him and his confidence in the Cup Series, because today he was up front racing against some of the biggest names in NASCAR. He was racing with All-Stars in this All-Star race, and Connor Zilic, we feel like he is going to be, a future superstar in the Cup Series at some point in his career. But given the difficult start he's had to this year, I think that this top 5, is a sigh of relief, and also could be a shot in the arm for him, because as you mentioned, when he was been struggling this year, when he went back to the O'Reilly Series and won, he said it was a reminder that he still had it, that that he is a talented race car driver, because if you've been a rookie in the Cup Series, it can knock down your confidence several steps. So I feel like that this can be a really good thing for him and the 88 team at Trackhouse, and that they can build some momentum in the next few races. So it was nice to see Connor Zilic finally have his best race yet in the NASCAR Cup Series from start to finish. And he did have a penalty there that dropped him back in the order, but he was able to recover from that and drove through the field. And if it hadn't been for that penalty, I wonder if he could have had anything for Denny Hamlin and Chase Briscoe there at the end.
3 great moments from a race weekend where, as we all mentioned, it started off with some serious crashes, but thankfully Alex Marquez, Johann Zarco, they're going to be okay. And a big thank you to all the marshals out there, each and every race, volunteering to ensure we have safe racing, and the medical teams from the AMR safety crews to the teams that are traveling with Formula E, MotoGP. We always hope there's a race where they don't have to be used because everyone finished the race safely, but when something goes wrong, knowing that they're around just makes it where this sport could travel and race in a safe manner. That said, we're out of time, but remember, Grid Rising tomorrow, Matt and Tanner will be on the air to recap the almost at Xfinity, the NASCAR O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, Craftsman Truck Series, plus NASCAR Mexico, much more racing to follow. So subscribe, hit that bell icon, follow across social media at Grid Network. Don't forget gridnetworktv.com. We're going to have an article posted up from Tanner Smith and Isha Bourgeois about Indianapolis. And a big thank you to our Patreon, Colin the Show, Mark, Robin, David, Matthew, Crystal, Nico, and Gloria for investing in the Grid Network. For Kobe and for Matt, I'm Joe. Thank you for watching today's program. We'll see you next time.